It's 4 in the morning, pitch black, and if I don't get out to that trough in the next half hour and break the ice fresh off it, 6 animals go without water until I find the time again. And a cow that goes a day without water in this cold can go dry on me for good. That's not a small thing to risk over an extra hour's sleep. Folks hear winter and picture us resting. There isn't a single field left to plow. That part's true. There's also a stove that can't go cold and a school day starting in 4 hours. And half today's work is already done by the time the sun bothers showing up. I'm Annie. Back east, winter meant staying indoors by choice. Near a fire, I didn't have to feed myself, with obviously nowhere I had to be before the sun came up. It's not a pause out here. It's the same amount of work, wearing a different coat, starting a full hour before the sun does me any favors. Before there's any light to speak of, I'm up feeding the stove, and the children are up right behind me because 6 animals out in that barn don't know or care what season it is. Somebody's got to break the ice off every water trough before a single one of them can drink. Somebody's got to milk twice a day, same as summer. And somebody's got to feed and bed them down with straw so they don't freeze standing where they sleep. And that bedding's not a one-time job either. It gets mucked and freshened near every day because an animal standing in its own wet straw all winter sickens fast. And a sick milk cow is a problem that costs this family a good deal more than the 10 minutes it takes to fork out clean straw. All told, morning and evening chores together eat 3 to 4 hours out of this day, every single day, whether there's a crop in the ground or not. Once the animals are seen to, there's breakfast, and it's plain. Hot thing meant to hold a body through a long cold morning. Cornbread most days, fried potatoes if we've got them to spare, a bit of pork off whatever we smoked in the fall, and coffee if we've traded for it, chicory brewed up instead if we haven't. It's fuel, eaten quick before the children bundle up for school. On a clear day with the roads packed hard enough to walk, that's a couple of miles each way on their own 2 feet. After a fresh snow, when walking's not sensible, a neighbor with a sleigh takes the children in, and I'll have warmed a soapstone at the hearth beforehand, wrapped in cloth and tucked in under their feet for the ride. That stove's a whole occupation of its own, and it starts long before winter does. A house our size, with one stove working through a real Iowa winter, needs somewhere between 8 and 12 cords of wood to see it clean through to the spring. A cord's a stack 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet. Getting 8 to 12 of those cut, split, and hauled is weeks of work that mostly has to happen before the snow's too deep to move through the timber at all. 2 men working together with a cross-cut saw and an axe can fell and rough limb maybe 1 or 2 trees in a day, and that's before the splitting and hauling even starts, which is easily another day's work per tree once we're done. Out on the treeless parts of this prairie, some families haven't gotten that luxury to begin with. They're burning corn cobs saved back from the fall shelling and twisted bundles of straw because there simply isn't a grove close enough to draw on. Early winter carries its own separate rush, too, before any of the shed work or spinning settles into its slower rhythm. That's butchering time. Hog and sometimes a beef animal both, and the cold weather's doing us a real favor there, since it slows spoilage enough to let a family process far more meat in a few days than they ever could in warmer months. It's hard, fast, physical work while it lasts, and everything after it, the smoking, the salting, the candle and soap making from the rendered fat, all of that traces straight back to those few frantic days. While the stock's tended and the wood stacked, the men find themselves with an entirely different kind of winter than you'd expect. There's no plowing, true, but there's a whole shed full of jobs that summer never left time for. Men out here spend a good part of the winter shaping ox yokes and single yoke. If the wood's already seasoned, right, is a day's honest work from start to finish. A simple sled for hauling can go together in a few evenings after chores, piece by piece, whittled and pegged together by lamplight. Wagons and sleighs get repaired too. Fence rails get split and readied for spring. Every axe, hoe, and scythe on this place gets sharpened and rehandled where the wood's worn thin. Most plows out here are still the old wooden moldboard kind, not steel, and those need constant tending. Some years it's a new beam. Other years it's an iron share refitted by whichever blacksmith's forge is closest. Since that forges fire, doing double duty, keeping the smith warm while he works. Harness gets mended too. A new collar pad stitched or a torn strap resewn. 2 or 3 hours careful work if you've got a good owl and prepared leather. And that's the kind of job that gets slotted in after supper some nights. Worked at the kitchen table when the shed's gotten too cold to sit in comfortably. Shoes are their own whole winter trade out here. Most families buy one pair of proper shoes and then patch and resole them for years rather than replace them outright. And it's common enough for one household to end up mending shoes for 2 or 3 neighboring families over a winter, not for coin, but in trade for their hands some harvest. That's the real shape of a frontier winter economy. Not money changing hands nearly so much as favors, banked up carefully against a season when you'll need them returned. The woman's winter looks entirely different, and it's every bit as full. Middays when I get my best light, so that's when the fine work happens. Sewing that needs a steady hand, cutting pieces for a new garment, and on a day when the weather cooperates enough to dry things properly, the wash as well. Baking saved for midday too, since that's when the stove's already at its fullest heat from cooking, and there's no sense wasting that warmth on anything less than a real batch of bread. Dinner at noon is the real meal of the day, hot and substantial, and whatever's left of it becomes a lighter supper come evening. I don't spin near as much as folks back east seem to imagine every frontier woman does. It's a fair bit of work for what you get. A good day at the wheel might produce a pound, maybe a pound and a half of yarn, and that adds up slow against a whole family's need for stockings and mittens. Truth is, plenty of families out here, mine included, buy at least some cloth and yarn already spun when a trader comes through. Same as anyone back east. Weaving, where it happens at all out here, tends to be one household's whole winter project rather than everyone's everyday task. One older Ohio settler was known for weaving nearly every day from New Year's clear through sugaring off time come spring. But that kind of daily loom work was the exception, not the rule. Where I do spend real winter hours is light and soap. We're a family that goes to bed early enough to make do with a candle or two most nights. But even at that, seeing us through till spring means dipping somewhere near 2 or 3 hundred of the things, 6 or 8 wicks at a time, on a notched stick, dipped and cooled and dipped again, 20 or 30 times over, until each one's finally thick enough to burn a proper while. On nights I'm short or the task at hand's a quick one, I'll use a little grease lamp instead. Just a twisted rag wick sitting on a dish of lard, though it throws more soot than I'd like, and I only trust it for something brief. Soap's simpler than this time of year. Mostly just topping off what I rendered right after butchering. Boiling down saved ash and fat whenever the barrels run half empty. A day's work at most. Quilting's the one winter task that turns solitary work into a genuine gathering. Most of a quilt gets pieced alone, evening by evening, but the actual quilting, stitching the layers together on the frame, that's when 6 or 8 women will come together for a single day and finish what would have taken one woman weeks working alone. Come January, if there's a term running, my children are off to school most weekday mornings. Back where I grew up, school ran through the warm months and stopped for harvest. Out here, it's flipped entirely, and for good reason. Come spring and summer, every child old enough to walk a straight furrow is needed in the fields. So it's winter. Once that field work's finished, when the schoolhouse actually fills. It runs 3 to 4 months most years, and the biggest, oldest boys, the ones who'd never have set foot in a schoolhouse come July, finally show up too, because there's nothing left to keep them home. Districts around here have learned that lesson well enough to hire a man to teach that winter term specifically, and pay him double what a woman teaching the summer term earns, purely because those grown farm boys are a handful no young schoolmistress much wants to manage alone. On the days school doesn't run, the children shell corn by the bucketful, sort next year's seed out from whatever's damaged or too small, or help with whatever indoor work needs an extra set of hands that day. By the time evening rolls around, chores done twice over, stove fed, children home and fed themselves, this house finally settles into one stretch of the day that's genuinely mine to shape. Knitting comes out, mending comes out. Somebody's usually reading aloud whatever borrowed book or months old newspapers made its way out this far. While the rest of us work with our hands and listen, some nights it's the game instead. Checkers most often, sometimes cards. And when there's snow enough outside and patience enough left in the children, a round of fox and geese in the yard before bed. And here's the part I didn't expect before I came out here myself. Winter's actually when the real visiting happens. Sleighs move easy over packed snow in a way wagons never could through summer mud. So this is the season for quilting bees, for neighbors gathering to sing, for the kind of company that simply can't happen in July when everyone's chained to their own fields from dawn to dusk. An early Iowa settler named Newhall once called this season decidedly more cheerful than dreary, on account of the sleigh rides and the visiting. A pastor's wife not far from here, a woman named Karen, wrote in her own diary about evenings full of singing and conversation, even in years when the hardship was real and plain. Come spring, when the fields open back up and this family scatters out across from dawn to dusk again, it's these winter evenings I'll already know I'll miss the most.